Monica was a 21-year-old girl with sad eyes and a gentle heart. She lived in a big house in Kumasi with her father, Kelvin, her stepmother, Araba, and her younger sister, Alice. Monica's mother had died when she was born, leaving her to grow up without a mother's love. Her father, Kelvin, never showed her any affection. It was as if Monica was invisible to him. Kelvin had never loved Monica's mother. Their marriage had been arranged by his own father, forcing him into a union he never wanted. When Monica's mother passed away, Kelvin felt nothing but indifference. To him, Monica was a constant reminder of a marriage he was forced into, a life he never chose. His heart was cold towards his eldest daughter, and his eyes only sparkled when he looked at Alice, his precious daughter with Araba, his childhood sweetheart. Alice was only 2 years younger than Monica, but Kelvin treated her like a princess. He gave her everything she wanted. "Papa, can I have the new dress from the mall?" Alice would ask, her voice sweet as honey. "Of course, my darling," Kelvin would reply, smiling. "Anything for my princess." Whenever Alice asked for something, Kelvin would rush to fulfill her wishes. New dresses, fancy shoes, or a day out with her friends, Alice always got what she wanted. But when Monica asked for anything, even just a kind word, Kelvin acted like he didn't hear her. He never looked at Monica or called her his princess. Araba, Monica's stepmother, was even crueler. She hated Monica because she blamed Monica's mother for taking away the man she loved. In her eyes, Monica was just a living reminder of the woman who had once stood in her way. "You are just like your mother," Araba would hiss at Monica, "lazy and good for nothing." She made Monica do all the house chores, even though they had plenty of servants. Monica would scrub the floors until her hands were sore, wash the dishes until her back ached, and sweep the yard under the hot sun. But Araba wasn't done with her cruelty. She would forbid the servants from giving Monica any food. "She can eat after her work is done," Araba would say with a cold smile, "if there's anything left." Sometimes Monica went days without food, her stomach growling with hunger. She would quietly drink water, hoping it would stop the pain, and continue with her chores. One day, Monica saw Alice leaving for another outing with her friends. Alice wore a bright pink dress, her hair done beautifully and neatly. She laughed and chattered as she got into the car, waving at Kelvin. He waved back, a proud smile on his face. Monica watched them from the window, feeling a heavy weight in her chest. "Why do they hate me?" Monica whispered to herself. She wished for a hug from her father, a kind word from Araba, or even a friendly smile from Alice. But every time Monica tried to speak to them, they turned their backs on her. It was as if she was a shadow in the house, unnoticed and unloved. When Alice returned from her outings, she would often bring back bags full of new clothes and shoes. She would show them off, twirling in her new dresses and laughing. "Look at my new shoes, Monica," Alice would say, her voice mocking. "Papa says they are the best in the city. You could never have shoes like these." Monica would smile weakly and go back to her chores, her heart aching. Alice loved to make trouble for Monica. If something went missing or broke, Alice would point at Monica. "It was her. Monica did it," Alice would shout, her eyes glinting with mischief. Araba would turn to Monica with anger. "You ungrateful girl," she would scream. "After all we do for you, this is how you repay us?" Kelvin would say nothing, his face stony, as Araba yelled at Monica. Even if Monica tried to explain, nobody listened. She learned to keep quiet and take the blame. It was easier that way. Each day was the same for Monica, filled with endless chores and harsh words. She longed for a different life, one where she was loved and cared for. But that life seemed like a faraway dream, something she could never reach. The only thing Monica had was hope, a small light inside her heart that refused to go out. She hoped that one day, someone would see her, truly see her, and love her for who she was. As the days went by, Monica's heart grew heavier, weighed down by loneliness. But she didn't let her tears fall. She kept them locked away, deep inside, as she swept the floors and scrubbed the dishes, wishing for a love that seemed so far away. One sunny afternoon, Kelvin sat in the office looking worried. His business was in big trouble. The company was losing money fast, and he didn't know how to save it. Desperate for help, Kelvin went to see Mr. Owusu, the richest man in town, for help. Mr. Owusu listened to Kelvin's worries with a thoughtful look on his face. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I can help you, Kelvin," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "But there is one condition." Kelvin's heart raced with hope. "What is it, Mr. Owusu? I'll do anything," he promised eagerly. Mr. Owusu leaned forward. "I want one of your daughters to marry my son, Kwame." Kelvin was taken aback. He knew about Kwame. Rumor has it that he was involved in an accident leaving him disabled. The proposal surprised him, but the promise of saving his business overshadowed any concerns. "I agree," Kelvin said quickly, not even bothering to ask for his daughter's opinion. He assumed it didn't matter as long as the deal was sealed. Back home, Kelvin decided it would be Monica who would marry Kwame. She was the less favored daughter, and he didn't mind if she was unhappy. All he cared about was saving his business. Kelvin called Monica into his study. She entered, her eyes filled with fear because she could sense something bad was about to happen. Kelvin looked at her with a hard expression. "You will marry Kwame," he announced firmly. "Mr. Owusu will save our business, but only if you marry his son." Monica's eyes widened in shock. "Father, please, I don't know Kwame. How can I marry someone I've never even met?" she pleaded, her voice trembling. Kelvin's face grew stern. "You don't have a choice," he snapped. "If you refuse, you will be thrown out of this house. You will have no one to care for you." Monica felt like the ground was falling away beneath her. Araba and Alice, who had been eavesdropping, stepped into the room with smirks on their faces. "Listen to your father," Araba said with a wicked smile. "You should be grateful. He's even giving you a chance to help the family. You've been nothing but a burden." Alice giggled, enjoying Monica's distress. "Yeah, you should feel lucky that anyone wants to marry you. You don't deserve anything better," she taunted. Monica's eyes filled with tears. "I can't do it," she whispered. "I can't marry someone just to save your business. I want to marry for love." Kelvin's face turned dark with anger. "Enough," he roared. "You will marry Kwame, or you will leave this family and never come back. I will not have an ungrateful daughter ruin everything." Monica cried out in despair, but her cries were ignored. Kelvin turned to the servants and barked, "Take her to her room, lock her in. She won't leave until the wedding day." Two servants grabbed Monica by the arms and dragged her upstairs. They shoved her into her room and locked the door behind her. Monica pounded on the door, screaming for someone to help her, but no one came. She sank to the floor, sobbing. Inside her room, Monica felt like a prisoner. She had no way to escape and no one to help her. She looked out the window, wishing she could fly away, far from the cruelty of her family. But there was no escape. The walls of her room felt like they were closing in, trapping her in a life she didn't want. Meanwhile, Araba was dancing in the shadows of the hallway, a smile on her face. "Finally, I'll be rid of Monica," she whispered to herself. "I've been waiting for this moment for so long. Soon, she will be gone, and I won't have to see her sad face anymore. My Alice will have everything, just like she deserves." Monica cried herself to sleep that night, knowing that her fate was sealed. She had no choice but to marry Kwame or face a life on the streets. Her father's words echoed in her mind, filling her heart with fear and sadness. She knew that whatever happened next, her life would never be the same again. The day of the wedding came quickly, and Monica felt like she was stuck in a bad dream. She wore a beautiful white gown, but there was no smile on her face. Her heart was heavy with sadness and fear. As she walked down the aisle, she finally saw Kwame. He was a handsome man with deep, serious eyes, but he sat in a wheelchair. His face looked distant and sad, and Monica could feel the coldness between them even before they exchanged vows. After the ceremony, Monica moved into Kwame's house. It was big and beautiful, but it felt cold and empty. Kwame's room was on the ground floor, filled with books and a piano he never played anymore. Kwame used to be full of life and joy. He was smart and had studied in the best schools abroad. He had big dreams and everyone admired him. But everything changed when the accident happened. A careless driver had hit Kwame one day on his way home, leaving him unable to walk. The accident not only shattered his body, but also his spirit. Kwame's fiancée, who had stood by his side for many years, left him soon after the accident. She couldn't bear the thought of a future filled with doctors' visits and uncertainty. Her departure broke Kwame's heart. From that moment, he became cold and temperamental, shutting out the world and isolating himself from everyone, even his own father. The love that once filled Kwame's heart turned into bitterness and distrust. Mr. Owusu had tried everything to help his son. He consulted many doctors, some from the best hospitals in the world. but none of the doctors could promise that Kwame would walk again. Each time, the news was the same. There was no hope. Slowly, Kwame began to lose all hope too. He stopped going for treatments, saying they were a waste of time. Seeing his once lively son, now isolated and miserable, pained Mr. Owusu deeply. He feared that Kwame would end up completely alone, and he couldn't bear the thought. Mr. Owusu wanted to find a partner for Kwame, someone who could bring light back into his life. But no one from their social status was willing to marry their daughters to a man who would spend his life in a wheelchair. Desperate, Mr. Owusu began to lose hope of ever finding someone who could help his son. That was when Kelvin came to Mr. Owusu with a business proposal. Seeing an opportunity, Mr. Owusu set a condition for the deal. Kelvin had to agree for his daughter to marry Kwame. Mr. Owusu believed that Monica, being young and kind, could bring comfort and company to his son. He hoped this arrangement would help Kwame find some happiness again, even if it was just a little. Mr. Owusu told Kwame, "Your mother wouldn't want to see you so sad and alone. She would want you to be happy, even if it's with a stranger." Kwame missed his mother dearly, and so he agreed to the marriage, but only to ease his father's worries. After moving in, Monica tried to be kind to Kwame. She brought him his meals and helped him with his medicine. But Kwame didn't care. He believed that Monica was only there for his father's money. "You don't need to pretend that you care about me," Kwame said one day, his voice cold. "You just want the riches my father can give you." Monica was hurt by his words. "That's not true, Kwame," she said softly. "I don't care about money. I want us to try and be friends." But Kwame just turned his head away, refusing to listen. Life in Kwame's house was hard for Monica. The servants followed Kwame's lead. They treated Monica with little respect, whispering behind her back and calling her names. "She's only here for the money," they would say, laughing. "Just look at her pretending to care." Monica heard these things, and it made her heart ache. She felt lonely and trapped, just like in her father's house. Every day, Monica would try her best to make Kwame smile. She would tell him stories and even cook his favorite meals. But nothing worked. Kwame's heart was locked away, and he wouldn't let anyone in. He spent most of his time alone, staring out the window or reading his books. Monica would sit beside him, hoping he would talk to her, but he stayed silent. One day, as Monica tried to start a conversation, Kwame snapped. "Why are you still here?" he shouted. "Can't you see I don't want you around? I didn't ask for this marriage, and I don't want it. Go back to your room and leave me alone." Monica's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. She quietly got up and went to her room, feeling more alone than ever. She wished she had a mother and someone she could talk to. Her new home was supposed to be a place of safety, but it felt just like the house she had left. As the days passed, Monica realized that she couldn't leave. She had nowhere to go. Her father had made it clear she wasn't welcome back. So she stayed, hoping that one day, Kwame's heart would soften. She wished that one day they could talk, and maybe, just maybe, he would see her as more than just a stranger. She held on to this small hope, even as the coldness of their marriage threatened to freeze her heart completely. One evening, as Kwame wheeled past Monica's room, he heard soft sobs. He paused and gently knocked on the door. "Monica, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. Monica quickly wiped her tears and replied, "It's nothing, Kwame, just thinking." Kwame didn't push her for answers, but from that moment he began to watch her more closely. He noticed how the servants whispered behind her back and ignored her. He saw how hard Monica tried to bring a smile to his face, even when he ignored her. The next morning, Kwame called for all the servants to gather in the living room. His voice was stern as he spoke. "I've noticed how some of you treat Monica," he said. "She is my wife, and she deserves your respect. Anyone who disrespects her will no longer work here." The room fell silent. The servants exchanged nervous glances. They had never seen Kwame so serious. That very day, Kwame fired 2 of the worst offenders. The rest of the servants started showing Monica the respect she deserved. They began calling her Madam Monica and treated her with kindness. Monica was surprised by the sudden change. She noticed how the servants now smiled at her and greeted her warmly. She felt a wave of relief and happiness. Later that day, Kwame approached Monica. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've been unfair to you. I see now that you're not here for money. You're a good person." Monica felt her heart soften. "Thank you, Kwame," she replied. I only wanted us to be friends. Kwame nodded. Maybe we can be more than friends, he said quietly. As days turned into weeks, Kwame and Monica spent more time together. They would sit in the garden, talking about their dreams and fears. Monica told Kwame about her life in her father's house and how she had always felt unwanted. Kwame shared stories about his accident, his lost hopes, and his sadness. For the first time in a long while, they both felt understood. They were no longer alone. As they spent more time together, Kwame and Monica grew closer. They fell in love, their hearts healing from the pain of their pasts. Kwame's father, Mr. Owusu, was happy to see the young couple grow closer with each passing day. One afternoon, Mr. Owusu came rushing into the house with a letter in his hand. "Kwame, Monica, I have great news," he exclaimed. "I've received a message from a renowned surgeon abroad. He believes he can help you walk again, Kwame. He says the surgery has a high success rate." Kwame's eyes widened. He had given up hope a long time ago, but now a small flicker of hope began to grow inside him. Monica squeezed his hand. "You should do it, Kwame," she said softly. "It could change everything." Kwame agreed to go through with the surgery. They flew abroad, and the days leading up to the surgery were filled with both hope and fear. On the day of the operation, Monica held Kwame's hand. "Everything will be all right," she whispered. Kwame nodded, taking comfort in her words. Hours passed, and finally, the surgeon came out with a smile. "The surgery was successful," he announced. "With time and therapy, Kwame will walk again." Mr. Owusu hugged his son tightly. Tears of joy ran down his cheeks. Monica's heart felt light, and she couldn't stop smiling. She was so happy for Kwame. The weeks that followed were filled with hard work. Kwame went through therapy every day, and slowly he began to stand. Then he took his first steps. Monica was always by his side, encouraging him. As Kwame grew stronger, his love for Monica deepened. He showered her with the care and attention she had never received before. He would bring her flowers, cook her favorite meals, and always listen to her. Monica felt like she had found the love she had always wished for. Kwame decided to take charge of his life again. He told his father he was ready to help with the family business. Mr. Owusu was overjoyed and thanked Monica. "You've brought happiness back into my son's life," he said warmly. Monica smiled, knowing that she too had found joy. Kwame and Monica stood together, looking at the sunset. They knew that the future held many challenges, but as long as they had each other, they could face anything. Their hearts were filled with hope, and they were ready to start a new chapter in their lives. Meanwhile, back at Kevin's house, the family continued life as usual. After solving the company's crises, Kevin continued supporting Alice and Araba's luxurious lifestyle. Life was good, and they were all happy. None of them thought about Monica. It had been 2 years since she left. They didn't bother to even find out where she was living with her husband. They were too busy living their luxurious lives to wonder if she was okay. Monica was now married to Kwame, the son of the richest man in town. To Kelvin, Monica was out of sight and out of mind. He didn't care that she got married to a total stranger. His business was doing well, and he felt he didn't need her anymore. But one day, things started to change. Kelvin's business began to fall apart. His company lost a major contract which affected his business. Sales were dropping and customers were complaining. His workers were unhappy and his money was slowly disappearing. Kelvin tried everything to fix the problem, but nothing worked. He felt trapped and desperate. "Araba, we need help," Kelvin said one evening, looking worried. "The company is in trouble and I don't know what to do." Araba frowned. "What do you mean? I thought we were rich," she snapped, clearly annoyed. "How could you let this happen? You promised Alice a new car for her birthday, and now you're telling me we're losing money. What about the lifestyle we've built?" Kelvin sighed. "I know. That's why I need to find a way to save the business." Suddenly, he remembered Monica. She is married to Kwame now, and Kwame's father, Mr. Owusu, was very wealthy. Kelvin thought if he could talk to Mr. Owusu, maybe he could get some help. The next morning, Kelvin put on his best suit and drove to Mr. Owusu's mansion. The gates were tall, and the garden was filled with flowers. Kelvin felt nervous as he knocked on the big front door. A servant opened the door and led him to a waiting room. Kelvin sat down, his heart pounding. He hoped Mr. Owusu would understand and help him. After a few minutes, the servant returned, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Owusu is busy and cannot see you," she said politely. Kelvin's face fell. But it's important, Kelvin pleaded. Please tell him I'm Monica's father. The servant nodded. Mr. Owusu knows who you are. He does not want to see you. Please leave now. As Kelvin left the mansion, Mr. Owusu watched him from his office window. He thought about the story his son Kwame had told him. Mr. Owusu had wanted a good wife for Kwame, someone who would care for him and make him happy. But he never imagined anyone would treat their own daughter the way Kelvin and his family treated Monica. The cruelty Monica had suffered shocked him. Mr. Owusu felt sorry for his daughter-in-law, who had been abandoned and mistreated by her own family. He had no sympathy for Kelvin, who had come begging for help. To Mr. Owusu, this was the time for Kelvin to learn a lesson. Later that evening, Mr. Owusu told Kwame about Kelvin's visit. Kwame listened quietly, his face set in a serious expression. I won't tell Monica about this, Kwame said firmly. She's 8 months pregnant. The last thing she needs is more stress. I want to protect her from any more pain. Kwame's heart was heavy as he thought about his wife. Monica was the kindest person he had ever known, and she deserved only happiness. He decided to shield her from the truth, not wanting anything to upset the peaceful life they were building together. Kelvin, meanwhile, drove home, his heart sinking. He couldn't believe Mr. Owusu had refused to see him. He felt lost and had no idea how to find Monica. He didn't know where she lived or even her phone number. Monica didn't have a phone when she left. For the first time, Kelvin realized how much he had neglected his first daughter. When Kelvin got home, he told Araba and Alice what had happened. Mr. Owusu refused to help us, Kelvin said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Araba's eyes widened in surprise. What do you mean he refused? She asked, anger rising in her voice. Monica is his daughter-in-law. Why wouldn't he help her family? He doesn't care about us, Alice said, crossing her arms. And neither does Monica. She's so ungrateful. After everything we did for her, this is how she repays us? Araba nodded. Yes, ungrateful girl. She got married and forgot about us. We should have known she was useless. Just then, the phone rang. Kelvin answered it, his hands shaking. It was his business partner, and the news was bad. Kelvin, the company's major shareholder, has pulled out his shares. Our company is falling apart. There's nothing we can do, the voice on the other end said. Kelvin's face turned pale. He hung up the phone and sank into a chair. This is all Monica's fault, Kelvin shouted, angry and scared. If she had helped us, this wouldn't have happened. Kelvin rushed to his office, hoping to fix the problem, but when he got there, it was too late. His workers were packing up, the office was empty, and there was nothing left to save. Defeated, Kelvin drove back home, his mind racing with worry. As he opened the front door, the house was quiet. Araba? Alice? Kelvin called out. There was no answer. Kelvin walked into the living room and saw a note on the table. His hands trembled as he read it. The note was from Araba. It said she was leaving with Alice. She couldn't live in poverty, and she had taken all their savings from the joint account. They were gone. Kelvin dropped the note, his hands shaking. His family, his business, his money, everything was gone. He had nothing left. Tears filled his eyes as he sat down, feeling alone and betrayed. He thought of Monica, the daughter he had pushed away. Kelvin realized too late the pain he had caused. Karma had come knocking, and now he was the one suffering. Days went by, and things got even worse. Kelvin watched as his assets collapsed overnight. His houses, his cars, everything he owned was taken away to pay his debts. He lost everything. The stress was too much for him to bear. One morning, Kelvin felt dizzy and collapsed. His vision blurred, and he fainted, falling to the ground. When he woke up, he was in a hospital bed, his head pounding. The doctors told him his blood pressure had spiked. Kelvin lay there, feeling weak and defeated. He thought of Monica, the daughter he had cast aside. He wished he could turn back time and make different choices. Now all he had was a broken heart and an empty life. He had no family, no money, and no future. All he had were his regrets. Monica sat in the nursery, rocking her baby girl to sleep. Little Amanda was 3 months old, with a sweet smile and big, curious eyes. Monica loved to watch Amanda sleep, feeling the warmth of her tiny body against her chest. Kwame, her husband, stood by the door, smiling at them. His heart was full as he watched his wife and daughter. Life was perfect, full of love and happiness. One evening, after dinner, Kwame sat Monica down in the living room. There's something I need to tell you, he said, his voice serious. Monica looked at him, her heart pounding. "What is it?" she asked. Kwame took a deep breath. "It's about your father, Kelvin. He's in trouble. His company is gone, and he's lost everything. He's in the hospital now. I didn't want to tell you while you were pregnant because I didn't want to stress you." Monica felt a mix of emotions, sadness, anger, and pity. She had once craved her father's love and had wished he would show her even a little kindness. But now she had a husband who adored her and a daughter who filled her heart with joy. She felt safe and loved for the first time in her life. "I don't know what to say," Monica whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Kwame took her hand. "I just wanted you to know. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but if you feel like visiting him, I will support you." Monica thought about it for a few days. She remembered how Kelvin and Araba had treated her, the harsh words, the cold stares. But she also remembered the time she had begged for her father's attention, the times she had tried so hard to make him proud. She decided she needed closure. She wanted to see her father one last time and then leave the past behind. The next morning, Monica asked Kwame to take her to the hospital. They drove in silence, both lost in their thoughts. When they arrived, Kwame waited outside while Monica went in. She felt nervous, her hands shaking as she walked down the white hospital corridor. She stopped at the door, took a deep breath, and entered. Kelvin was lying in the hospital bed, looking pale and weak. His face was thin and his eyes were filled with sorrow. When he saw Monica, he sat up, surprised. "Monica," he whispered, his voice shaking. "Is it really you?" "Yes, Papa, it's me," Monica said softly. Kelvin's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Monica. I know I was a terrible father. I treated you badly, and I regret it every day. Please, can you forgive me?" he begged, his voice breaking. Monica looked at him, the man who had caused her so much pain. She thought about her life now, about Kwame and Amanda, about the love she felt every day. "I forgive you, Papa," Monica said, her voice calm. "I've found the love I was looking for. I don't want to hold on to the past anymore." Kelvin cried, his tears falling freely. "Thank you, Monica. Thank you," he said over and over. Monica felt a sense of peace wash over her. She paid Kelvin's hospital bills before leaving. She felt lighter, like a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. As for Kelvin, he spent his days in a small apartment filled with regret. He knew he had lost the chance to be a father to Monica, and now it was too late. He thought of Araba and Alice, who had left him when he lost his money. He was alone, filled with regret for the choices he had made. As for Araba and Alice, they had moved to a faraway city, hoping to start fresh. But instead of being frugal with their spending, they continued spending lavishly, and soon they ran out of money. They did not know how to do anything, but in order to survive, they had to look for work. Araba had to clean houses, and Alice washed dishes in a small restaurant. They struggled to pay their rent, living in a tiny apartment. Life was hard, nothing like the luxurious life they once had. One evening, Araba and Alice sat on the worn-out couch in their small apartment, flipping through channels on their old TV. Suddenly, they saw a familiar face. It was Monica, sitting next to Kwame, smiling brightly. They were on a talk show, speaking about a charity project they were starting to help children in need. Monica looked happy, full of life. Araba and Alice watched in shock, realizing the girl they had looked down on was now living a happy and fulfilled life. Shame and regret filled their hearts. They had chased after wealth and luxury, only to lose everything. Monica had found love and happiness, and that was worth more than all the riches in the world. Alice and Araba spent their days filled with hardship and regrets. Monica, Kwame, and little Amanda lived happily ever after, surrounded by love and laughter. The pain of the past was replaced by the joy of a bright future. Monica had learned that forgiveness could heal even the deepest wounds, and she was ready to embrace the beautiful life that lay ahead. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like this video and subscribe to this channel for more amazing videos.